Hey everybody, Corey Poirier here. Hope everybody's having a magical and an amazing day. Was having a bit of trouble logging in for a second or two, so sorry I'm a second or two behind, but here we are. Hope everybody's, like I say, having a fantastic day. Super excited to be here and talking all things book writing. So excited to talk about books a little bit today. Um, and I'm just commenting to somebody who's having a hard time getting in. Um, so we are, like I say, officially live. I'm going to be talking about books for the next perhaps 45 minutes. Not planning to make it a extra long training, but I did want to share this training with everybody, and I'll just tell people the reasons why we're doing this in the first place, because that's important to know as well. I see Lisa Schermerhorn is with us, so hey Lisa, how's it going? And then the other two I see Facebook user, because I can't, the way StreamYard works, it doesn't necessarily always show who it is that's logging in. But welcome everybody. And so the idea today is to essentially, I wanted to take people through the author training. Okay, I'm going to reply one more here and then I'm done replying. Okay, there we go. We should be. Oh, it's Mihal, I guess, is Facebook user. Miles is saying hello from Alberta. Hey, Miles. Wandana. How's it going, Wandana? So excited to have everybody joining us. And so why, I guess, to get behind the why am I doing this training today? And I'm also going to see if I can share my PowerPoint. I'm kind of hoping I can. Let's just see here. Share screen. Will that work? Let's see. And so why I wanted to do this today is I had some people asking me about selling books and how can they sell a certain number of books, or if they're doing their own launch, can they launch in the biggest way possible. And so because I was getting the question from quite a few people recently, I thought I would do some training today. And like I said, I had somebody ask me directly the other day, and I thought, well, why don't I do a training? And then, I'm having a hard time sharing the PowerPoint, so I may have to do this a different way. So why? Let's see here. So I thought, why don't I do this a training on here? And Laura, it says, okay, gave StreamYard my permission twice. Hopefully it worked this time, and it did, Laura. I can see your name now and face. So like I said, it's giving me some trouble here, so I may have to share my slides a different way. There we go. Let's try it this way. But yeah, like I said, I'm trying to share some slides, and so people are asking me about. So fun when you're doing it by yourself. Usually, I have somebody with me, and then I don't have to be talking while I'm also doing this right here. And I'm seeing your questions there, so just know that I will help when I can here in a second. So let's just look this up and see if I can find it this way. Okay, I think we got it here. Sorry about that, guys. I just want to make sure, see if I can get my PowerPoint working. There we go. I think hopefully this will work. Yeah, I think we're good now. So now that I'm not distracted about that, let's go back to what I was talking about. So basically, people have been asking me, hey, how can I sell books? Struggling to sell any amount. Do you have any training around that? And I thought, why don't I jump on and do a free training about all the things that I've learned about selling books over the course of the last, I guess, how many years has it been now? I've been in the book business, I guess it's probably approaching 20 years. Just to put some numbers on it, we've had well over 200,000 people grab copies of the books that I've been involved with and or written and or launched. And so I've been in the book business a while. And as you probably know, not a lot of people make a lot of money in the front end of books. So that amount of books, it's been a solid, I'll say, return on the front end. But really the bigger picture is the things that it's been able to help me do in the back end, meaning to build my business, to build my brand, to make connections that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get doors opened, all that kind of good stuff. So I have somebody asking, do you know anyone who helps authors get on the New York Times bestsellers list? I just see Facebook user, so I'm not sure who that might be asking. But if you can I'll actually, I just wonder if I might know the person who's asking that question, but I'll talk about New York Times bestsellers list in a little bit here. So make sure in the Q&A that I talk about that. I see Mickey's from Southern Colorado here. Also, yeah, so there we go. Now that I'm a bit more structured here, feel free to put in the comments where you're visiting us from. Feel free to put your name if I don't see your name in the, if it's just showing up as Facebook user on StreamYard. I'm just looking at StreamYard. I'm not looking at the Facebook stream or the other streams because we're on YouTube right now, LinkedIn, and various other places. So feel free to ask any of your questions there. I'll circle back. I'll scroll down and circle back to the questions later. But really, like I said, I wanted to talk about how you can write, market, and sell your books, essentially. Again, the results that we've seen over the years is hundreds of thousands of people grabbing copies of our books. And learning the book business has allowed us to add thousands and thousands to my email newsletter list, which of course then in turn, we've been able to bring some of those people over to our Blue Talks business. So the books have really helped us a great deal. And so I'm going to open up a slideshow here. Hopefully you guys can see that. So just before I dive right in, let me ask you, who can all see my slideshow? Can you guys see my slideshow okay? Woohoo, slides are showing. Awesome. I will say, by the way, lesson learned. Heidi asked me if I wanted her help for this today. I said, no, I should be good. And then, like I said, the first couple of minutes, I'm trying to figure out why the slides aren't opening and all that kind of good stuff. So you guys can see it. That's what matters. So let's jump right in. I'm going to do a bit of a training, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A. But feel free to post your Q&A in the chat. I'll try to scroll back and check those out, or otherwise you can save it to the end. Either way, I will dive right in and leave time for questions. And like I said, I'm going to do a bit of a training in the front end. So a little bit about my story. For those of you who may not know me, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my story. If you've ever been on webinars where people share who they are and it lasts, hey Ray, nice to see you here. It lasts like a half hour of a 45-minute presentation. That's not me. So here's the nuts and bolts of it. I was born in a small town, raised by a single mother. That's a picture of me you should never share with anybody in the world ever. And next to my mother, I was about 15 years of age, but I grew up in a small town, raised by that lady, my single mother that raised me. I graduated from high school without knowing the difference between fiction and nonfiction. I barely graduated high school. I got a 49+1 in one of my classes, which really meant that the teacher gave me a passing grade, because I probably didn't land at 49+1. I might have landed at 45 or 47. And he gave me the extra points to get me over the hump, but also wanted me to probably always know I barely graduated. So even, I guess technically, I don't even know. You could almost say I don't know if I did graduate. Like I mean, I guess on paper I did, and he gave me the numbers, and I'll never see the real score. But that's barely graduating. Like that's skinny your teeth. And that was a course I needed, so I would have failed otherwise. So I say this because I wasn't the guy written in the yearbook. Nobody was writing most likely to succeed or likely to succeed. And so that's a bit of my background. I didn't read my first book until age 27. Didn't write my first book until about age 29, I believe. I told my mother back then I wanted to write a book, and she said, I think you have to read one first. So I hadn't read a book yet, and I thought I wanted to write one, but I waited until I read my first book, and then I eventually wrote a book. The first book I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It changed my life. Second book I ever read was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I've often said, if you're going to start with 2 books and you start late, those are two pretty good books to start with. So I feel like I got ahead of the game, even though I started late, because of the 2 books I started with. Now, having said that, read those 2 books, they changed my life. And that's why I believe in books so much. That's why I wanted to talk about this today, because books changed my life. And I believe they can do the same for you. And your book can change your life as well. So that's about me in about 3 minutes. I won't take you through my background in terms of how I got into speaking and all that stuff. A lot of you on here may have heard it before about how I got tricked into performing stand-up comedy one night, and that led to everything else. So I won't go into all that. Again, what I just shared with you is probably the most you need to know to get things rolling. Lisa, I see your question about how do you keep the momentum going? And that is definitely a challenge area. So I'm going to make a note of a couple of things I want to tackle later. So momentum is one thing. And I also want to tackle New York Times list. This is a bit of an interactive training, so I may be jumping around like that every now and then. So here's the question. Why even write a book? Why care? Why write a book? And what I'll tell you is there's so many reasons you should write a book. So there's, first of all, legacy is one reason. You should write a book because even if nobody else ever reads it other than your family, then they know your history, they know your story. So even just to write your book, a book, so that you're sharing your story with your family for the future, that alone will be worth doing, because it becomes your legacy, but also your family doesn't have to guess at your life. It becomes almost like the journal they find years later. So that's one reason to write a book, even if you're not somebody who wants to run a business or grow a business with your book or leverage your book for other things. Just to have your legacy out there in print, I think, is worth it. It's an amazing legacy moment to write your book. That's one reason. Second reason to write a book is obviously the credibility that it gains. I will say that whenever I'm considering people for my podcast, we get pitched. No joke, right now we've been on a break with the podcast. We haven't been taking guests in the last little while. This is my main podcast called Let's Do Influencing. No joke, we get pitched 40 to 50 times a week minimum every week. And that's as a show that's not even putting new episodes out right now. So you can imagine how much we were pitched before that, because our show's in the top 1% to top 1.5% of all shows, depending on the timeline. And because of that, we get pitched a lot because people can see the top shows and we keep getting pitched because of that. And I bring this up because whenever I am looking for guests, if somebody's an author on a subject and I have to choose between them and somebody who's not an author, every day of the week, I'm going to choose the author on the subject if everything else is equal. So a second reason to write a book is credibility. It'll get you those interview spots. It'll get you on the big shows. It'll get you that extra exposure. Like it'll help you land a branded talk, like a TEDx talk. When they see you're an author on a certain subject, it just elevates you a bit more. And like I said, on the shows, they're going to want to bring on an expert, and usually an expert they see as the author. That's why, as we jokingly say, author is a word that's already inside of authority. So authors are authorities on that subject. And so they look to that and say, well, this person wrote the book on it. Let's bring in the person that wrote the book on it. It also increases your value to your potential market. If you are a business owner, if you think about it this way, if you were going to hire a dentist, and there's a dentist that wrote the book on dentistry, and then there's one that that didn't, one that didn't write the book on it, who will most people go to? I would argue most people will go to the people that wrote the book on something than the person that didn't. So two equal dentists, everything else is equal. Nothing that would lead you to one more than the other. If one wrote the book on it and the other didn't, if you have a choice, you're probably going to go to the one that wrote the book on it. And as we've seen in the past, maybe pay more to deal with that person or work with that person. So they become the celebrity. They get, again, that local media, that local exposure because they have the book. So it's just all the things that a book allows you to do from a credibility point of vieview, from an exposure point of view. And then last but not least, the lives that you can change. I have, I probably should have thought about this before I put this was a flash training I decided in the last minute to do because somebody asked me. It was like the fifth person that asked me in 2 weeks about books. And I said, let's just do this. And in real time, I didn't do any prep. But if I would have done prep, one of the things I could even share as well on the screen is the impact that you can have on people's lives. So Laura, thank you, Laura. She wrote a lot of the things I said in there about what the reasons are for writing a book. But the impact, I've had people, since she said it publicly, I'll say it. I wouldn't share it if she didn't. But Rochelle Babler, thinking of different Rochelle. Rochelle Babler, who's somebody that's in our Blue Talks community, has shared multiple times that my book, The Book of Why and How, was a book that helped her find her and discover her why. So, she said that book and Start With Why by Simon Sinek were the two books that helped her on the course, like find the course that she's on right now. I mean, so there's no amount of money that replaces that, that feeling that you had that kind of impact on somebody. So also writing a book allows you to have that kind of impact. There's another person, I won't say their name because I didn't say it publicly, but they told me they were about to quit, quote unquote, being an entrepreneur. And then they read my book. I had sent it to them. They won it, I think, in a contest or something. But I sent them the book. They read it over the holidays a few years ago. And ultimately, instead of deciding to stop running their own business, they decided to go all in, go bigger, and ultimately transform their business. And so I didn't do that. They did the work, but the book was one of those triggers, one of the catalysts for them making that change. So that's the power of writing a book. So that's the whys. Laura's covered them all quite well. Their legacy, family record or journal, credibility and authority, increased perceived value, and the lives you can change. Love it. Thanks. Great summary, Laura. Let me ask you this, and this goes back to the point about credibility. Does this photo establish credibility? Now, again, it's going to depend, of course, on if you're a viewer of TEDx and all that kind of stuff. But does this photo add credibility for most people? Feel free to put in the comments if you want. Laura said yes. Simon Sinek, start with why I shifted my focus and validated the way I wanted to do my business. Much the same, Laura. And I was actually reading it this month, in fact, rereading it because, excuse me, I wanted to, look at Blue Talks and make sure that we were leading with our why first. And if you actually go to, I won't take the time to do it now because I could have a hiccup. But if you go to our sales page, we have a sales page for Blue Talks, and right now at the top, it actually talks about why I launched Blue Talks in the first place, like what I was hoping to do with it, trying to help people trying to help people get their speaking engagements sooner, people to get that credibility sooner, people not have to take as long as I took. Also wanting to give people that leg up so that they up level really quickly. When you get to speak at an established university or established college, or you get to speak on a branded stage or co-author a book with a big name thought leader, those things elevate your brand immediately. Well, I wanted that. So that's what we're leading with now. We're letting people know, here's why we created Blue Talks in the first place. And Laura, that goes back to me rereading Start With Why and making sure we're leading with our why instead of what we do. So again, the question is, does this photo establish credibility? I've asked this question numerous times with the same slide, and the answer 99% of the times is a yes, essentially. And how about this one? When you see an as seen on banner and you see that somebody's been seen on multiple places, and maybe you make the assumption that those places vetted this person. So does this establish credibility? Again, when you're watching here now, feel free to put a yes in the comments if for you it establishes credibility. Again, when I've asked that question in the past, it's typically a big yes. This one here, I could have picked any picture out of a magazine, but basically it's meant to be a magazine cover. Does a magazine cover, when you see somebody on the cover, does it establish credibility? And so when I say all this stuff, again, this goes back to the point of this kind of stuff establishes credibility much the same way a book establishes credibility. And that's why you would want to do it, because the credibility that I can establish from those 3 slides I showed you on a website, they say that when you have an as seen on banner, in studies, they've shown that it's increased credibility by upwards of 70%. So when somebody goes to your website, you're more credible in their eyes by upwards of 70%. So a book, in my opinion, will do the same type of thing. When you get to their website and you see the book they've written, it'll do the same type of thing. So it's just, all these things are just added credibility. Again, TEDx just adds credibility for people that are, can I trust Corey? Oh, well, he's been vetted by, he's somehow managed to get on 3 TEDx stages. Oh, well, he's managed to be on all these platforms. Oh, well, he's been on magazine covers. This isn't a me Inc. thing. This is just to say that's the power of credibility, and a book will also do that for you. So that's why. So let's talk about writing and crafting your book. I'm not going to go into this in much depth because there's lots of ways you can learn this from me in other places. We have it on YouTube in different videos. Let me ask you, how many people here watching right now have heard of my spider method when I talk about the spider method? So this is the method I talk about. I learned in comedy, stand-up comedy, and it's a mind mapping exercise that gets you thinking around stuff. And so, meaning, and when I say around stuff, good Laura's calling him Bob. Wandana has heard of it. Thanks, Wandana. So my spider method, Bob the Spider. Basically, the spider method essentially is this. It's a mind mapping exercise where whenever I want to decide what I'm going to talk about. So let's say I'm going to do I'm going to try to find a piece of paper to show you this. I'm moving, by the way, offices finally back down to my original office. And so I'm working with a lot less up here in the office right now. It's pretty scary. But you can see there's nothing behind me. There's no background today. But whenever I'm preparing for a presentation, whenever I'm preparing for a Facebook Live, if I'm preparing for a talk or whatever, I use the spider method. So what I'm suggesting is you can use this for your book as well when you start writing. So I don't know if I'll be able to show it in here, but the spider method, I usually start with the body of my spider and then legs from my spider. And so the legs, if I'm doing a talk, I usually want to have only 3 messages. Well, in that case, the 3 legs will be each message, like each message will be a leg. So for example, if my talk was on customer service, and I'll explain how I use this in books differently, but if my talk was on customer service, I might deliver 3 stories on customer service. And then from those stories, I'm going to have 3 takeaways, like 1 takeaway for each. I'm going to show you this in a second here. So for example, if my thing was on customer service, I might draw a customer service belly in the belly of the spider. It says customer service. And then the first one, it says 1. That would be like 1 story I'm going to share. And then I have a takeaway from that story. That's that first leg. Second leg, the same thing. And the third leg, the same thing. Now, basically, when I'm putting this together, essentially what I'm doing is I'm going, okay, what's the story I could tell about customer service that I'll put in that first spot off the leg. And then the next part is what's the takeaway I want them to have? And that's the very next spot off that same leg. So this is my way of, when I'm developing a PowerPoint, for instance, the customer service will be this header of my slides. So that'll be the first page, the title page. And then the second page might be that number 1. So it might be, what's the story I want to tell? So the slide might be a picture of me performing stand-up comedy, and that's going to be my first story. And then maybe the takeaway I want you to have from that is the importance of making sure your mic's turned on. So that'll be the third slide, if that makes sense, because that's the next part of my leg. That's your takeaway. And so that's how I develop a talk. Well, how you can use this in writing your book is you can do that same spider. You draw the body of the spider. And let's say your book is on, actually, I know Laura, Lisa, Wanda, and I see you guys commenting here. Maybe give me a topic. You know, what's your book about? Anybody want to share what their book is about? I don't mean it has to be your book. I just mean throw a topic out. And Laura, that's laughing out. Like, make sure you have your mic turned on. She knows that's a reference to my comedy story. Well, you know what? While you guys are thinking of a topic, let's just say the topic was mindset. So Lisa said mindset. So what I would do in that case, I was actually going to say something about do a book about stand-up comedy, but let's say it's mindset. So in that case, the body of my spider might be around mindset. Now the book might be a very specific topic around mindset, but either way, let's just say it was around mindset. Well, what I'm going to do then is, let's say I wanted to have 12 chapters in the book. How I'm going to use the spider method is I'm going to actually start doing more legs. I'm going to do 12 legs, and basically each leg is going to be a chapter in the book. So I might say on mindset, let's say one of the things I wanted to cover, since I've seen Miles put in fear, so I'll just use that within the thing I've already started with. So let's say my topic is mindset, and let's say one of my chapters is on fear. Well, I'll write fear inside that first leg, and then I'll branch off from that leg, and I'll write the 3 things perhaps that I want to cover around fear in that first chapter. So if you see what I'm doing here, I'm using this mind mapping to create my book from scratch. So in the center of the body is mindset, and then I'll have 12 legs if I wanted to have 12 chapters. One of the chapters is on fear, so that's my first leg. I put fear in the circle that you guys seen from the legs. And then I might, off of that one circle that's on that first leg around fear, I might put 3 extra legs from that one and say, here's the 3 things I want to cover around fear. So really what you're doing, if you've ever seen some writers, what they'll do is they'll put a bulletin board up and they'll put index cards on it, and each index card will be a different chapter or section. That's essentially what I'm doing, but I'm doing it on using the spider method instead. So I'm on one page. And so this is how I typically will start when I'm trying to come up with the ideas for what should be in my chapters, what should be in my book. And then, of course, from there, that gives me the framework and the outline. And then as a writer from there, then I'm going to dive in and I'm going to cover, let's say the first chapter is on fear. Then I'm going to now start actually writing my book. And I'm going to use that stuff that I covered in my spider method. So hopefully that makes sense. As far as one of the things that I'll do when I'm starting with a book is I'll do a mind mapping exercise to know exactly what the framework of the book's going to be before I ever start writing a word. And you'll find there's some writers that write books that way. Another way to write a book, which I also do, so it depends on the book I'm writing, but another way to write a book, which I do probably more often than I do the framework for the books. I use that spider method for a lot of things like talks and presentations. But for writing books, another thing that I do is I literally, and you have to have the personality to do this, I think, but I sit down and I literally say, I know what the book's going to be about. I know what I want it to open with, and I know what I want the ending to be. Now I'm just going to write. And I'm hoping the book's going to write itself. And I've been very lucky with that, like fortunate that I've been able to, multiple books, basically take that approach. So I had no framework on the wall, no outline. I gave you guys the outline and framework because some people need that. Excuse me. But for me, it's almost like the book channels through me when I start writing. And so in that case, I start writing, typing on the computer, and basically I know the character is the main character. I know I know who basically what I want is the main topic of the story. I know perhaps what I want the ending to be, or the beginning, or both, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. So I just start typing. That's the other way. And I think you'll find if you start interviewing authors, you'll find various ways they sit down to write, various ways they bring together their book. And you'll also find that there's no right or wrong way. The only wrong way is the way that doesn't work for you, and the only right way is the way that does work right for you. So just make sure it works for you. So if you're a person that channels the book, and when you do stuff, it always just comes to you, and you never have writer's block and what have you. The other side is the flip side, like I said, of maybe you're the opposite scenario of you need a framework. And so I gave you that framework with the spider method. I see my friend Mark Morbeck here, and he says, the spider method. So Mark remembers the spider method as well. So those are some approaches you can take as far as the starting to write the book. I also want to talk about testing your book, and then I'll circle back to that $500 thing that I had there. Testing your book. I'm a big believer. Once you've gotten the first draft written, and I mean, we could talk about just writing the book forever. There's so many variables, but let's just talk a couple of things. First thing is, for most people, their first draft of the book is going to be ugly, meaning it's not going to be the final polished copy. It's not going to be the pretty thing we see later. I remember one time hearing Robert Kiyosaki talk about how he's not a best-selling writer, he's a best-selling author, because he said, if you see my writing, you'd understand why I consider myself an author versus a writer. A lot of amazing writers, their first draft doesn't look very good, which should give us hope if you feel you're not a great writer, because things can be tightened up, things can be edited later. But I believe in the power of getting a first draft written. There's a great quote that I heard, and I'll paraphrase it, that says, my decent to crappy book that's out in the world changing lives is doing better than your brilliant book that you never ever released to the world. So I would say it's important to write crappy first and get it done than it is to be a perfectionist that nobody ever sees your book. I love that, what Brene Brown calls SFD. I'll instead of the S word, I'll say crappy first draft, but I like that. I like that a lot. Start working. Nobody has to see it until you're ready for them to see it, but start working. Zig Ziglar had this great quote that said, you don't have to be great to get started, but you certainly have to start if you ever want to become great. So the testing your book, what I would say is, once you get it to a point, maybe a draft or two later, after you're ready to share it with the public, what I recommend, and Laura, I need to get your feedback from you on my book. You gave me some early on feedback, but I need to get their full feedback. We need to talk about that soon. But having said that, so as far as the testing of the book, I basically put it out to about 50 people, and I said, it's funny, I see that don't procrastinate. I sent my Blue Talks chapter in the final day, pushed it to the limit. I like that personal comment. Having said that about the testing, basically what I did was, I learned this from James Redfield, who wrote the Celestine Prophecy. 35 million copies sold. James shared with me one of the things he did early on was he sent the book out to 50 people. They agreed to read the book and offer feedback at each stage. And he basically didn't finish polishing up the book and writing it until all of those people said they couldn't put the book down. So they kept reading it, reread it again. And he wanted to know when they put the book down, what pages they stopped on, because even if they stopped for supper or something else, he wanted to know when they could put the book down, because he wanted to write a book nobody could put down and people wanted to pass along. And so I think it's a really important lesson in the power of testing your book. And you don't have to test it to that level, but I do believe it's important to test it. So how do you test your book? It's pretty easy. You literally find people that are willing to read the book, ask them if they're willing to give you honest feedback, send them the book, and let them tell you honestly what they think about it. So my newest book, The Enlightened Passenger, which is not out yet, it's still in that testing phase. I asked in our Blue Talks author group who'd be willing to read the book and give me feedback. I think I had around 40 people. I do have to circle around to see who maybe hasn't sent it yet. I went up to about 40 people, and I actually posted and said who's willing to do it, and about 40 people said yes. So I had these people testing the book. They've read it. A lot of them have read it, come back with feedback, shared their thoughts. And it's just a way for me to know what's not working in the book, what I might be missing before I start really editing it. I did pretty it up so that I had my editor go through it, at least so that it would look edited. I had the format it, so at least it would look nice, but it's certainly by no stretch fully edited, and there's certainly still mistakes there. So having said that, that's the power of testing it is you have the best chance of having a book that's going to impact the most lives if you know what resonates with people and what people don't. Somebody said, yes, I would read it. So maybe I found another tester. I don't know your name, though, it says Facebook user. So if you can put your name in there, I'll know. But yeah, so having said that, oh, Miles was the procrastinator. Awesome, Miles. So having said that, again, I believe in the power of testing your book, even your chapter for Blue Talks. Test it, put it out to people, get feedback, see where it stands, see what people think. And this will help you make sure you're writing a book that resonates with people, making sure that you're at the stage where it's done, making sure you're at the place where people want to share the book and talk about it and tell others and all that kind of good stuff. Testing it is a great way to do it. There's a reason why Hollywood always tests the movies before they release them, and they find out, oh, this didn't work. Oh, people didn't really like that character. And that's what you can find out by testing. By the way, I will see the names afterwards when I go back to the different places you guys are commenting from. But I see that Brad Walsh says he's in for reading the book. Mickey here says yes. So Mickey says yes. And someone else said I am game. Got to find out who that is. What I will tell you is I pushed the release of the book a little bit, so I still have time to get people that want to dive in. And by the way, the book is like, I think, less than 80 pages. I should have mentioned that. This is meant to be a book like, if you're familiar with Og Mandino, it's meant to be that style of book. Very short. It's a parable. It's a fictional book that has some root in reality, and so it's not a big read. Actually, I think Laura told me she sat down planning to read a page or two, and she was at page 12 before she noticed what time had passed. Oh, so I said I'd go back to that under $500. I don't have time to fully go into this. And Michelle, let me see. When writing your first book, where a good place to turn to find someone for editing formatting? Okay, I'm going to make sure I tackle that as well. Editing formatting. So thanks, Michelle. Janine said she'd like to read it as well. Like I said, I'll go back. And Laura got to page 12, I think, in the first hour, and now you're at page 17. That's hilarious. I have to laugh, Laura. That's awesome. Reading it slowly. But you were at page 12, I think, on that first day. So what do I mean by under $500? A lot of people think when they get into a book, and if you already have your book released or you're trying to market it now, like Lisa Schermerhorn mentioned earlier, this may not be as applicable to you. But what I'm going to tell you is people struggle sometimes saying, I can't afford to release a book, or they get struggling with people coming to them saying, I can release your book for you, but it'll be $15,000. What I will say is I've been able to put out books, publish books, start to finish books in your hand. I wish I had oh, I do. One sec. I'll be right back. I'll show you one. It's rare. I've never had this in my office with me, so this is perfect timing. I was meant to see this. I looked over and saw it. This book right here called Standing Ovations from Every Customer. It's a really tiny pocket book, so you can see it here. Very, professionally done. I don't know. Trying to put it in there. Anyway, this book completely formatted, and this book I actually got done for less than $500. So holding a copy in my hand for less than $500, and I see people spending $15,000 to release a book like that. So what I want to tell you too is, obviously, you want to get the best editor you can. You want to get the best formatter. It takes time to find the person that can do it under a certain price, but also do a great job. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, you can just put it out to the world and find amazing people and get all the stuff you need done with a book for that kind of price without spending some time first. But I've spent a lot of time on Upwork and Fiverr, 99 Design, finding the right people. So I found people that could do the editing for me, found people that could do the formatting for me. Right now, we're spending more than $500, but I still could get a book done for $500 or less. So I just want you to know the cost doesn't have to be high. Really what that comes down to is finding an editor you can trust that will do editing at a great rate. Of course, a small book like this makes a big difference too, because there's not a lot of editing involved and a lot of word count. At the same time, a book cover designer, my book cover designer is... for this book here, the one I have now, so I'll actually tell you the numbers I have now. So the person I have now doing the editing, to edit this book, because it's smaller, this isn't reflective of what I'd pay for a Blue Talks or my own books now, but a smaller book like this, to get edited would probably cost me about $200, I'd say, roughly around $200. As far as formatting, the formatter I work with, probably $150 to $200. and the cover designer, because I use a separate cover designer, probably 100 to 150. So what are we around $700? So probably $700. That would be to have it edited, formatted, and the cover. And those are really your key components. You can print it on Amazon now for the cost of one book. So I say that because that's probably, I could probably have this book done for between 750 and 1,000 would be my guesstimate if I was trying to sort of skimp and I went to the people I know that can do a great job. Having said that, when you're starting out, it's harder to find those people, but I just want you to know what's possible. So if you're spending $3,000 or $4,000 on your book, you're doing well, because there's a lot of people that think it costs $15,000 to $20,000 to release a book, and it simply doesn't. Somebody asked me about finding the good editors and formatters. I'll circle back to that shortly. Wandana says right here, I really need a good editor. I just lost mine. I have somebody I can connect you with as well. It's different than the one that I work with now, but I'll explain when we chat why I think she might be a good fit. But I'm just going to put a note here to connect you with her. But it's a matter of finding those people. So if you know somebody who knows those people, or if you can put a Facebook message out and say, hey, who knows a good editor I can work with? But at the end of the day, the biggest challenge with finding a reasonably priced person is actually finding the people, spending the time finding the people. It's just finding them, working with them, knowing you can rely on them, and knowing they do a good job, or finding somebody who knows those people that can do a good job that can recommend them. And I see Alan is a person he can recommend as well. So awesome stuff. So I just want to put it out there. You don't have to spend as much money on your book as a lot of people think. One other thing I want to talk about is marketing and promotion. A lot of people don't realize how many different places you can use to market your book. There's so many different options. Like, you can obviously use Facebook and Amazon ads. My experience is Facebook ads don't do a really good job selling your book, but they do a good job with awareness. Kindle book offer. I mean, so you can offer, you guys may or may not know this, but if you're on Kindle with Amazon, if you want to do a free or 99-cent book offer, you have to sign exclusively with Amazon for, I believe it's 90 days at a time. Could be more than that, but last time I checked, it was 90 days. So you have to sign exclusively with Amazon, meaning you can't put your digital book anywhere else. But in doing that, you can offer your book for free or for 99 cents to the basically 70% of the world's book market, because Amazon has, well, last I heard, 70% of the book readers in the world. But you can put it on Amazon. But the key thing is, you can put it on Amazon, but if you don't have anybody to market to, it doesn't really do you much of a great job. I just remembered something I want to tell somebody who asked me about hitting their first 100 sales, and so, or hitting the Amazon list. And so I will tell you, Kindle's a great way to do it. So what I want to share with you is that there's many book marketing sites that you can go online, just search book marketing sites. But there's many book marketing sites you can go online and pay a fee. And what they'll do is they'll send out to their list of maybe 100,000 readers, they'll send a link to your book. Now, if your book's free, obviously you're going to get a lot of people that grab your book for free. The only way, in my experience, to benefit from that, other than you're getting awareness for your book, is to have an email sign up. I often tell people this: on the first or second page of your book, you should have a page that says, hey, thank you for grabbing my book. If you, as a thank you for doing so, go to this website and you can grab a free copy of my audiobook, or you can grab a free this or that. So you're sending them to a lead page from one of the first pages in your book to give them something for free. And then what you're doing is you're basically adding them to your newsletter. So we've added upwards of 3,000 people to my newsletter in a 5-day campaign. So that's pretty powerful. And how we did that was through a free campaign. So basically, we went to those marketing sites I mentioned to you. BookBub is the biggest one of them. They're the hardest to get onto, but there's a lot of other ones. You can go to these websites and basically pay them, like I say, $20, and they'll send your book out for you to their entire list of readers. Again, don't expect massive sales, but if it's free, you'll probably get a lot of downloads. And if it's 99 cents, then you'll get some buys. But the person that asked me, because they're going to be probably watching this, to do this training, the last one that asked me, they said, how can I basically sell a certain amount of books so I can hit the list? What I would tell you is the easiest way, bar none, to hit the bestseller list is to do a 99-cent Kindle book offer. So offer a Kindle book on for 99 cents on Amazon, and go to those book marketing sites and send people there. And I think you'll find, obviously you want to market it to people in your network and share it on Facebook and all that stuff, but I think you'll find it's probably the easiest way to hit the list. Now, the catch is some people don't feel as comfortable being a bestseller when it's not only 99 cents. But that's a personal choice. I don't see anything wrong with it. You're still selling the book, but that's the easiest way. So if you're struggling to hit the numbers on print sales or get a print order minimum, the other easy way to do it would be through a 99-cent book option. So I have somebody asking, should we self-publish? I cover that soon, self or traditional publish. I'll give you the quick answer for both of those. So again, book marketing sites is where you can go. So if you're going to go on book marketing sites and you have a book for 99 cents or free, or in general, when you're doing book marketing, you can also get reviews for Amazon, aim to get reviews, and that'll help push you up the list. Another thing you can do, by the way, with reviews, the person typically has to buy the book or the review won't count. And in some cases, if Amazon can figure out you know the person somehow, they may even discount the review. So always go for more reviews than you think you need. Technically, you can pay for real reviews. I don't mean fake reviews. You can pay for real reviews. And that's another option if you just don't have the people in your network. But again, make sure it's a reputable site and make sure they're really people really doing the reviews, and be open to if it's negative review as well. Another thing you can do for promotion is bulk book sales. One of the things I did early on that helped me sell, for one book series I had, we sold like 25,000 copies of this regional book series, which we had no business selling that many. It was only in Atlantic, Canada, small little region with 2 million people. And we sold like 20-some thousand books. A big part of how we did that was with bulk book sales. So we basically sold to corporate. Like we had people that were sponsors or were featured in the book or talked about the book somewhere, and they would buy like 50 copies of the book for their staff. So think about how can you sell multiple books to one company or one place at a time. And so that's another thing you could do is bulk book sales. So I hear Laura saying my voice is cutting out. Let me know if that's happening for other people too. It might be as I'm moving around a bit. I'm not sure, Laura. I can't hear it on my side, but obviously I'm not hearing the vocal side from my end, the other side. I'm only hearing my side. So yeah, bulk book sales. I mean, I could do a whole session on that. The gist is you want to have some bonuses for them. You want to make it applicable. It could be for if your book's around sales, for instance. You could go to a group that has a lot of sales staff, and maybe you convince them to buy 3,000 books for their whole sales team. Obviously, you're going to probably have to give them a discount, but that's an option. If you're a speaker, which I know you are, Lisa, you can go to them and offer them a certain amount of books if they hire you as a speaker, or if they pay for a certain amount of books, you can go in and speak for them at no cost. So it's a way to sell books, or you could do both if they have a book budget and a speaking budget. But what I will tell you is it's a great opportunity for people whenever they, in terms of bulk sales, it's a great opportunity if they're bringing you in to speak anyway for, say, 300 people. If you can find a way that you can get your book in those 300 people's hands, it's great for you. It's also great for the client because now there are people that watched you talk have a takeaway and a take home. So if you're a speaker, obviously selling books before the event, convincing them of the benefit of buying books to go along with your talk is also a great way to sell a lot of books. You can also do back of the room sales after your talk. Person here, my understanding is the person who does the reviews on Amazon has to spend $50 to be able to do a review. I'm not sure if that's accurate. Facebook user, I'm not sure who you are, but the answer is yes. I don't know if that's changed, but that's always been, or it's been for a while, that's been an Amazon thing. So they did have to spend $50. Wandana mentioned that it's possibly on anything at any time, not necessarily just books. I believe that is correct as well. But the key thing to note is the other side is if you're in the US and you have somebody that's in Canada that wants to review your book, if they do let them, they have to have spent $50 on the US side. So they have to have spent $50 in the Amazon store, that market that you're wanting to do the review for. So yes, you're right. And I believe it's still the same. So $50. So thank you for pointing that out, Facebook user, because again, I can't see the name. Another thing you can do is obviously just give free books. That's another great thing is just give out books for free. It's a great way to market. So Lisa's commenting here that they had a person that couldn't do a review because they don't buy from Amazon. So there is some sort of limit there. So another thing you could do is give free books to top bloggers. That's huge. Free books to top bloggers is a really big deal. James Redfield, who I mentioned earlier with Celestine, one of the things him and his wife Sally did when they were selling the book, they went around to 2,000 bookstores back when it was traditional bookstores. And every person that was in the book at the moment, they gave them a copy of the book because they felt if they're in the store, they were meant to get the book. That's part of the Celestine synchronicity. And so they gave out all these books. But I always thought the big profound thing that happened as a result of that would be that the bookstore owner also got the book. They read the book, probably loved it, and then they put it at the front counter and said, this is a book you have to read. So they tell everybody that came into the store. That probably really did a lot of powerful word of mouth for the Celestine. And my argument is you can do the same thing now by finding out top bloggers, top podcasters, top people in each industry, top influencers, and give them your free book. And if they love it and they share about it, that I believe is a similar thing to what James did in a more digital sense now. So that's something you could do as well around the marketing. So should we buy a box of books to sell at these events? And does Amazon give you a deal if it's your own book? So looking for good cooking, I'm not sure who that is, but the answer is, okay, so it's a personal choice whether you buy copies of your own book. I do. And I think it depends. Are you speaking at the event? Then it can never hurt, but you're going to have to make the investment. So as long as you're comfortable making the investment, then absolutely. We had somebody that was in our Blue Talks book. She wrote a chapter in it, and she bought 50 copies of the book, even though it wasn't going to count towards our, hi, Alicia, it wasn't going to count towards our Amazon count. She bought 50 copies of our book that she wrote a chapter in to gift out to clients, and then she ordered another 50 again. So I do it. I can't say if you should do it, but I think it's beneficial. If you have copies of your own books, whether it's the handout when you're on a plane or different places and you say, this is the person I need to give the book to, or to your point, whether it's to sell at events, then I think it's a yes either way. And the answer to your other question is yes. Amazon, if you're the author of the book, unless it's with a traditional publisher, so if it's self-published, you'll have a place called what's called Author Dashboard Central or something like that, or Bookshelf. And when you go in there, you'll have an author price. So your price will be lower. Little forewarning, it takes longer to print those books. So meaning if I go buy a book your book on the front end, the book might arrive in 2 days. If you go order your same book in the back end, it's a different printing process. It's a different department. And that book could take 10 days or 15 days to print. So it could take a month to get to you. But if you're buying them yourself to sell somewhere, just allow enough time and, you're getting them for about half the price probably. So yes, I would say beneficial to sell your books or give them out. And Amazon does give you a deal to buy your own book. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the other questions, but I'm just seeing questions as I go here now. So the question about can Amazon limit the amount of copies you can buy at a time? Yes. And it's really weird. There's some different variables there that affect that. It's hard for me to even speculate because it seems to change from time to time. But Amazon does limit the amount of copies you can buy of specific books at certain times. Sometimes it lets you buy 20 copies of a book. Other times it's 3. I think usually the limit is 3 if it's going to be a limit, or like a smaller limit. But yeah, they do sometimes limit it. But to go back to Alicia's question, they don't limit it if you're buying author copies. So on the back end, on the author side, you can order as many copies as you want, and you'll get your books a lot lower. For instance, some of our books, we can get down to $6 or $7 US. And then if you ship them, obviously, if you ship 50 books at once in a box, then the pricing per book is going to be cheaper than if you try to ship one book at a time each. So you benefit on both sides if you're the author. You get multiple copies shipped. It'll cost you less per book and less on shipping per book. I'm going to talk about endorsements in a little bit here. Social media posting, I think, goes without saying. If you have a book out, you definitely should post it on all the places. Make sure you hashtag in some of the popular book hashtags, like on Instagram. There's a popular There's a popular book hashtag. We'll try that again. And TikTok now is actually becoming big for books as well. Books are going viral on TikTok. And I forget what the term is, but it's like TikTok books or book TikTok or something like that. But you look that up and then use that when you're sharing your book. It might just mean the difference of an extra 100 eyeballs, or who knows, your book could go viral. So another big thing, and I'm covering a lot of big meaty stuff in a short amount of time. Street Team is something that, this is something I really should be spending an hour on its own. A lot of these things I should be spending an hour on its own, which is why I'm going at such a fast pace. But where Alan bought author copies and the copies didn't have page numbers. That's Alan Simberg. Alan, I haven't run into that before. But if you do run into that, so you print your own book and it doesn't have word pages, or it's somebody else's book, go to Amazon, and I'm pretty sure they'll fix that for you. You just have to show them that happened. It looks like it's Book Talk, I guess. So yeah. So check that out. Do a bit of a Googling about books that have been going viral and see why they're going viral on TikTok. It's worth looking into. A street team. Let me ask you real quick. How many people here have heard of a street team before when it comes to books? Okay. Right here. Okay. So on the street team side, whether you heard of it or you haven't, the short version of a street team, how it started was whenever people used to go to concerts and go see bands back in the 80s and 70s. If you recall, I mean, they still do it, but they did it a lot back then, where they would hand out flyers for the show they want you to go see. I mean, you still see it in Vegas, where they'll hand out flyers. Everybody walking down the street is handing out flyers, trying to get you to go to this show or over that show. Well, that was a street team. So they would assemble a street team of maybe 20 people, walk the streets, promote the band, try to get people to go to one place over the other. Well, in the book world, they still call it a street team. Essentially, what you're doing is now you're rallying a bunch of people that believe in you, believe in your cause, believe in your message, that'll actually promote your book. Now, again, to set up a street team, that's a whole day of training, how you do that, because there's a lot of variables. Essentially, you would reach out and say, hey, who wants to be a part of my street team? Explain what that is. Set up a Facebook group so that if you want to do it inside Facebook, so you can keep track of everything. Let people know what you want you to help them with. Maybe it's reviews. Maybe it's to tell you about the book. Maybe it's to do shares. Maybe it's to help you get on podcasts. But basically, it's a group of people that are doing everything they can to help you get your book to more people. And there's lots of ways you can reward them and thank them. It could be that they get free copies of the book. It could be that you do a free training that only they get if you have a specialized skill. It could be that you pay them. I mean, it's the sky's the limit. But essentially, a street team is a team of people that agree to help you promote your book, and you agree to, in return, basically make it a win for them that they're helping you. For some people, they just want to be a part of the team, and they just like to know they're a part of that. But you have to make sure you communicate well with them, you keep them in the loop, you keep them motivated. All I'll say on it is the street team can change everything for you, but it's a lot of work. Free plus shipping, I'm not going to go into that today because that's a whole funnel on its own. But that's whenever you see a book, and I know you've seen it in the past, you probably wonder how they do it, but you see a Facebook ad that says, hey, get my book for free. And then you click and it says, hey, just pay the shipping and get my book. That's a free plus shipping funnel, they call it. Basically what they're doing, they're legit giving you a book for the shipping, but what they essentially do is they charge, let's say, $10 for the shipping. Their goal with the shipping, it's not that they're making money off it. A lot of people think, oh, they're doing that to make money off the shipping because the $10 might be more than they normally would have to charge. But they're basically charging a blanket amount that's slightly more than they normally charge for shipping. That way they're covered if they ship to a place where it normally costs more. But let's say they charge $10 for shipping the book and they send you the book and they say it's free plus shipping. They're doing that where they're trying to break even on the book. So they're trying to break even with the shipping. Hopefully it covers the shipping of the book and the printing of the book. They break even. And why they're doing it in the first place is they want to add you to your email list. So they want to build their email list, let's say, and they want to be able to market to you afterward. So for example, if you sign up for Russell Brunson, if you guys know who he is, his free plus shipping, you get his book, .com Secrets, you pay the shipping. Basically, you end up on his email list because you signed up there. Right away when you sign up, he starts making offers like, hey, do you want to get a copy of the audio version of the book for $35? If you say no to that or yes, you might say, oh, before you go, hey, do you want to sign up for ClickFunnels for $200 a year? And so he usually starts making money on that side. But then the bigger picture is now you're on his email list that he can market to long term. That's on the free plus shipping. That's why most people do a free plus shipping campaign. How you actually do it, I don't have time to cover that today. So when we talk about the book launch, when you're launching the book, if you can get celebrity buzz, and I'll answer questions on how to get, I'll call it forewords written or endorsements and stuff like that. But if you can get the celebrity buzz, maybe they share it on their Instagram, show a copy of themselves in the book. That's the kind of thing that starts building momentum. Like Lisa, you talked about momentum. That's the kind of thing you can start doing. So I'm answering your question now, Elisa. That's the thing you can start doing to build momentum is start adding new elements like celebrity buzz. Another thing, if you didn't do it at the start, you can start adding bonuses. So for people who buy your book now, you have a unique bonus. If you had a bonus at the start, now you can offer a different bonus that they get this bonus if they sign or if they purchase a copy of your book right now. Again, the celebrity buzz is a huge one. So people see people holding your book. Get people to endorse your book. So Lisa, there's a lot of things you can do there to start building new momentum. Another thing I'll say is that if you want to really get a lot of books out into the world, one of the most proven routes for doing so, even over traditional media now, is podcast appearances. So podcast appearances, traditionally, they've studied, and people who listen to podcasts are traditionally people who buy books. So books are being sold more on podcasts than almost any other place. And so the reason I put Hal Elrod on the screen is this book here, The Miracle Morning. The last number I heard is 2.7 million copies of this book sold as a self-published book. That's almost unheard of. In interviews, whenever Hal gets asked how he sold so many books, over and over again, he confirms that he sold the bulk of the books by being on a podcasting tour. So he went on like 300 podcasts in a course of 6 months. And that's how he said he sold. That's the biggest thing that moved the needle for his books. Obviously, from there, momentum kicks in and all that kind of stuff. But podcasting is what sold the lion's share of the books. So get on podcasting interviews. Lisa, I don't know if you're still with us, but Lisa asked how to get more momentum. That's another way. Podcasts don't care traditionally how old your book is. Obviously, if it's newer, there's a benefit to them being the first one to share your story. But for the most part, they'll put you on talking about your book, even if your book's a year old. So another way to get momentum rolling again, Lisa, will be to get on some really good podcasts. Listennotes.com, with 2 N's, listennotes.com. I'll say, I see a question here. Okay. I want to make sure I answer that. So Lisa, I see you said you've done a ton of podcasts. Keep doing those. But what I would say is figure out who is the perfect audience for your book and get on those shows. So how do you do that? Like you can go on iTunes, for instance, if you write a health and wellness book, go on iTunes, look at the top 100 health and wellness podcasts, Lisa, and try to get on those. And one thing you can do is you can go to Listen Notes with 2 N's, listennotes.com, and on there you can find out how big the shows are. It tells you a percentage. Lower the percentage, the bigger the show. So Lisa, you could, if you were a health and wellness, I know you're not, but if you were health and wellness, you could go and look up podcasts under that, find the top 100, find out how to reach them, and then also go to Listen Notes and see how big they are. And that's a way you could determine what shows to be on and to kind of kick that momentum in. And hopefully those other things I mentioned about building momentum also you can try as well. Bonuses, like I said, exclusive bonuses you never offered before, get some new people to promote it, get new endorsements for the book. All those kind of things will help with your momentum. Another thing that you can do when you're trying to market your book is offer a free chapter. So on your newsletter, for example, me with my newsletter, I can, that's one of the things that I do when I'm getting closer to a book coming out is I'll offer a free chapter to people that are already on my newsletter. And then of course I can, when I go on those podcast episodes, for instance, Lisa, you could go on those podcast episodes and your giveaway could be a free chapter in your book. So, but find a way to get on shows, podcasts, do trainings like this that I'm doing. I don't have any offer today, by the way, just so you know, if you're waiting around for an offer, don't expect it to come. I'm not doing any offer here. I don't have an author course that I'm trying to enroll you in. But what I would say is if you do something like that I'm doing right now at the end, why couldn't you say, hey, I want to give away a free chapter? You could have it along the bottom of the screen saying, hey, grab a free chapter, go here, go to lisasbook.com. You go there, you sign up for the free chapter. Now they're on your email list, Lisa, and now they have a chapter, so they're teased about your book. If you already have an email list, give them a free chapter as well. Street team I already covered. Bestseller strategy, that's a whole separate day. By the way, I'm seeing multiple people saying, hey, you got to come on my podcast. I see, let me get you on my podcast. Lisa saying she's going to get on mine. Another person saying, come on Soul Talk podcast. So that's, if people are saying I can't get on podcasts this day and age, send them my way and I'll tell them how, because there's so many opportunities. For as far as what books to put out, you can put out a solo book, your own book, or a compilation. And again, I'm rhyming through some of the stuff. I'm trying to make sure I cover the most important stuff. We're rated around 45 minutes now, almost, I guess, 50 minutes. So I'm a little over what I planned as far as that side. So I want to make sure that I tackle your questions, but I just want to make sure I'm not leaving anything off the table that's really big. So when you do write the book, make sure you leverage it properly. So one thing, as an example, where are you listing that you're in the book? There's people that were in our book called The Book of Why, which has been on multiple charts. Foreword was written by James Redfield. Morgan James Publishing published it, so a big New York publisher. And so I have that listed all kinds of places. But I found out a lot of the people that are in the book don't even list that they're in the book. Why wouldn't you want to say I'm a contributor to a multi-time best-selling book? A multi-time best-selling New York publisher book, or however you want to word that, where the foreword was written by James Redfield of Celestine Prophecy. I mean, that's huge. And I see so many people that never take advantage of that. So are you listing the places? Are you listing the things that you've been a part of? So leverage. So what I'm getting at is think about the things you've been a part of and make sure in your email, one of your most powerful real estate items, make sure your stuff is listed there. So somebody said, I missed what you said about listen notes. So listennotes.com is basically, if you go there, Mihal, and you'll see and look up a show. So I should have mentioned that. You go there and look up a show. So let's say you look up Joe Rogan, since it's a common show. Go and look up Joe Rogan. And then when you look up his show, I think Joe Rogan has multiple shows. But when you look up his show, what it'll do is it'll show you a percentage. So it'll say like 1% or 0.05% or 10% or 20%. The lower the number, that's the bigger the show. So for instance, if the show says 1%, that means that show's in the top 1% of all shows in the world. So it's in the bigger part of the shows. So again, top 1% of all shows in the world. So if it said 1%, if it says 20%, that means they're in the top 20%. So the higher that number goes up, the smaller the show. If it doesn't have a percentage at all, that means the show is probably getting 15, 20 listeners an episode or less. Not a bad thing. It might be the right audience, but just so you know, that's how you can gauge how big a show is. There's nowhere else I found that you can actually find out or get a feel for how big the show is. Let's see here. I see somebody else offering up what they do to get on a podcast. So I was asked about this. So I'm going to cover, by the way, I'm now winding down to start tackling a few questions. So if you have other questions, put them in the comments. Again, this was brand new, no prep. So I didn't know how long it would go. I didn't do a prep on it. So I hope you're bearing with me. So let's see here. So self-published versus traditional publishing. I got asked that question. Which one do I recommend? My answer is simply this. What is your goal with your book? I'm going to ask you that question. And if the answer to that question of what is your goal with your book, you should sit down first and say, what's the goal of this book? If your goal is distribution only, or that's your main total goal, meaning I want to get into everybody's hands in the world, and my book is a book that appeals to the masses. If that's your answer, then traditional publishing is probably going to be your best path. If your goal is I want to make more money per book, if your goal is I want to get it out faster, if your goal is I want to have full control of the book, if your goal is I want to be able to bring whatever endorsements I want into the book. Your goal is I want to release it wherever I want and put it wherever I want, and so on and so forth. Most of those cases is going to be self-published. Basically, self-publishing gives you full control. Traditional publishing, a little less control. But a lot of things now that you got in the past with traditional publishers, you can get with self-publishing, except for it's hard to get distribution into places like the airports, Walmart, Target, stuff like that. That's really hard with your when you're self-published. And so if you have a book, again, that appeals to the masses, then I would say traditional publisher. Most of the other areas or most of the other things that you would have as a goal, self-publishing will do that. If you want to build a business from your book, both will work, but self-publishing may work a little bit better because, again, it gives you more flexibility. The key thing to know, though, is either way you have to market the book. A lot of people think when it's with a traditional publisher, they market it. Either way you have to market the book. Either way, they're going to pitch you on podcasts the same way you will yourself. The biggest difference is that when they market the book, they do a bit of the lifting. You're just going to have to do more of the lifting on your own if it's self-published. And you have to learn the book business more on your own if it's self-published. But again, to me, it comes back to, do you need distribution? Is it a book that appeals to the masses? Then maybe traditional publishing is worth looking at. If it's a book that's very niche or niche, then you'll probably want to look at self-published. And again, if you want all those other things I mentioned, probably self-published. I would like to thank, Miles. Thank you so much, Miles. I so appreciate that. How would Alan Simberg communicate with Amazon about changing the author's copies? Alan, I'll probably take that offline for that one because Kelly Filardo, I'll probably connect you with Kelly because she'll be able to give you the 1-2 step for that because that's what she focuses on all the time. So thanks so much, Laura. I like what you put there about the summarizing what is the goal with the book. So I always say to people, when you sit down with the book, decide what your goal is. JV marketing, again, another thing that I would have to spend a lot of time on. So rather than spending a whole lot of time on that, I'll just say JV marketing is when you partner with other people who have their own lists and communities, and they are willing to share your book with their market or community. What happens then is they have already given you the stamp of approval. They're telling their list or their community, you can trust Corey, check out his book. That's what a JV approach does, and it allows you to reach a big number of readers that you would probably otherwise never be able to reach. And I shouldn't say never, but unless your book goes viral or you have some magical thing happen with your book, typically, if you can have a big JV launch, it's probably one of the easiest ways to hit a large number of people in a short amount of time. The catch is you have to build JV relationships. That's a talk for a different day. But I can tell you, I have my next book that I'm putting out, I have 2 people that have lists of over 400,000 people that have both kind of hinted they'll share it with their list. I'm starting working with somebody in their Blue Talk side who has 120,000 people on their list, and I know she will. You can imagine if all 3 of them do, that's 1 million people that have the potential to learn about my book from 3 emails. How long would it take me to hit that same amount of people? In advertising, how much money would I have to spend? So a JV approach is powerful, but you have to build the relationship, and that's where it takes time, and that's where it takes giving first. Somebody asked who my New York publisher is, and Laura, once again, has answered the call and told you, so it's Morgan James Publishing. I like them because they're a traditional publisher, but they're an entrepreneurial style publisher, so I have a lot of flexibility with them. Here's some places where you can book some interviews. If you could literally just come on a thing like this, and we've already seen multiple people talking about booking people on their podcast just on this training in the comments. But these are some places where you can go and find hosts that are looking for people for their show. RadioGuestList.com is the place where I earlier got me. I saw Laura say, "I got you," where I was able to get interviews with CBS Radio and Forbes Books Radio. That's a tongue twister. So CBS Radio, Forbes Books Radio. Those listings were right inside Radio Guest List. Came to me in an email, free. Every day they send an email with multiple people looking. The only thing I've noticed now is there's more pay-to-play things that people are going on there and charging to be on the show. That's a personal choice if you pay. But early on, they had a lot of really big name shows. But you can still get on a lot of shows through these places. RadioGuestList.com, Matchmaker FM, and PodcastGuest.com. So I already talked about this. But fulfillment, that's, if you're not used to that term, that's just who's fulfilling the book order. In other words, who's sending out the book order for you. And basically, Amazon is one option. If you're self-published, Amazon, what's great about that, I have to see a question about what is a JV launch, so I'm going to tackle that as well. Fulfillment, Amazon, they basically fulfill your book orders for you if you're with them, self-published with them. So essentially, you have a back order site, and when somebody orders your book through Amazon, they take care of everything. They send it out, they ship it, they package it. You don't have to take care of anything. That's what fulfillment is. If you self-publish and you don't go with Amazon, then you're going to have to fulfill it yourself or somebody else. And don't kid yourself, it's a lot of work to sell and keep track of and wrap all those books. Jeff Walker, who wrote the book Launch, told me he did a big New York Times bestseller launch, sold 70,000 or 60,000 copies in 2 weeks. And the biggest challenge was him having to actually fulfill those orders. Was a nightmare. And he said he would never do that again. He had to have a team set up just to fulfill those orders. And then if you're a traditional publisher, then they'll have a solution probably for you. Somebody put in the comments, Ferrante is also an option for book fulfillment. So there's another one for people to check out. But again, I get that question a lot. How will I send my book out? Should I do it? Should somebody else? Amazon obviously is really easy, but again, that's a personal preference as to whether or not Amazon fits for you. So I'm going to skip that. Morgan James Publishing, I mentioned earlier. Crowdfunding, I'll only tackle if somebody has a question on that. But I will tell you that I use crowdfunding to launch my book, The Book of Why. And that book, our first crowdfund we did, and I could share a screen and show you this because it's still up there. The crowdfunding I did sold. Okay, another question here. New York Times bestselling author. I'll put that in a second. So crowdfunding, what it allowed me to do is I went into my network, ended up selling $11,000 worth of books in about 3.5 weeks. And so, first of all, I mean, it was a nice revenue stream before I ever even published the book. And basically, I went to Kickstarter. I was able to put a crowdfunder out to the world, tell people, hey, you want to support my book? Here's some of the rewards you get. I created the rewards. You can go check mine out and copy it if you want, my crowdfunding campaign. The biggest thing is you have to have the people to market to. It's not easy if you don't have a network of people, but I was able to bring in about 11,000 in sales. About 9,000 of that was profit to help me launch the book, and it also got a lot of attention around the book. A year later, I did another one with a group called Publishizer, which I believe is just relaunching, again called Publishizer, with a Z in the Publishizer side, and the Izer side, I should say. So Publishizer, and I think I saw an email that they're jumping back in fully. They took a break for a bit. But what's really cool about them is they're a crowdfunder. They work similar, but they're only for books. And what's really neat is if you hit a certain number of books, then certain publishers will bid on your book. So in other words, you can find publishers using Publishizer depending on how many books you sold. So I did my second launch with Publishizer a year later with the exact same book. We ended up selling about $9,500 or $10,000 worth of books. But because of how many we sold, this is a short story, a long story short, I basically tagged in Morgan James Publishing and said, I hope my favorite publisher decides to bid to publish my book. And then I actually put my campaign so they could see how many books I sold. They retweeted that and said, you have our attention. And then the next day, the publisher of Morgan James, reached out privately in a tweet and said, Corey, I want to connect you with my acquisitions team to talk to you about possibly acquiring the rights to publish your book. That happened because I was on Publishizer and I sold a certain amount of books, and they liked the fact that I sold a certain amount of books, and I was able to promote that. What I will say is, even outside of if I didn't approach Morgan James and take the initiative myself, I had about 12 publishers who reached out about wanting to publish the book. In fact, one of them was HarperCollins. It was their Christian imprint. And then there was another, I forget what other big one. I can't think of the names. Kohler Books, I think it was. But anyway, one of the big four book publishing entities, and then one that was just a tier below, reached out based on the number of books I sold on Publishizer. So crowdfunding can be really powerful. There, I told you more than I planned on with crowdfunding, but I'll try in the comments later to put the links to my 2 crowdfunding campaigns so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And this is a gift I wanted to give everybody, the Book of Why, since I mentioned it a few times. If you go to the bookofwhyaudio.com, you can get the free audiobook version of my book, The Book of Why. What it'll do is, I think you sign up, but then it redirects you to SoundCloud, where we have the full audiobook on there. So you don't even have to have Audible. I will eventually put it on Audible, but I just haven't yet. So in an hour and 15 minutes, longer than I even planned, that's the training side. I know I made it a bit longer because I decided to answer questions in real time as we were going through, but I didn't have any kind of plan as I came into this. So I saw some questions I want to tackle before I let you all run, because I did promise to try to keep this as tight as I could. Is there any more questions? I'm going to have a little quick snack here. Is there any more questions that people have just before I dive into answering the remaining questions that came in that I haven't answered yet? I'm still here, but feel free to put your questions if you have any last questions in the comments. I have a hard stop in 10 minutes, so don't worry. I'm not going to keep you much longer. Going once? Any questions? There we go. Okay, so let me tackle the questions that I saw come in earlier. Okay, so the endorsements one, thank you, because I skipped through that slide, so I will circle back to how to get endorsements. So first of all, I saw the question about the New York Times list. My answer to the New York Times list is, here's, a lot of people don't know how it works, and the person that asked me this might know how it works, but New York Times list, essentially, you have to sell a certain number of books, typically over 10,000 in 1 week, And that's print books. Not an easy feat, my friends. By the way, it can't be bulk books. So in other words, those books that you have to sell, they have to be from across multiple stores, and they have to be based on individual purchases. So making the New York Times list is no easy feat. By the way, the Wall Street Journal and USA Today lists work the same way. In those cases, you have to have at least 5,000 sold in a week. The difference is Wall Street USA Today bases it on actual book sales total. The New York Times is editorial as well. So in other words, you could sell 1 million books in a week, and you still might not make the New York Times list. And so it's really tough because it's 2 people or 3 people in a room that are deciding based on artistic merit as well, and based on what they think of the editorial of the book, what books should be on the list. So I always say to people, you can try to make those lists. And by the way, the New York Times list is the most prestigious, but there's so much involved in it that is out of your hands and out of anybody's hands. Versus Wall Street and USA Today, you can actually do a launch with the goal of selling a certain amount of books. And if you hit those numbers, 9 times out of 10, you'll make it on those lists. New York Times, again, you could sell more than you need it and still not make the list. So to answer the question of, do I know somebody that can help you make that list? Here's what I'm going to say. First of all, you need to know it's going to be pricey. So to get on the New York Times list, somebody's probably going to charge you a minimum of $200,000 to help you make the list. And a good friend, colleague of mine who does the Wall Street USA Today list said she's been in the business almost 25 years. She's never met anybody who will guarantee the New York list because of what I just said. So you could pay $200,000 to somebody to help you try to get on the list, and you're still not guaranteed to be on the list. So do I know somebody can help you get on the list? I know 2 or 3 people that have done it in the past, but at the same time, I don't want to promise you anything, and I don't want to even put it in that direction because of the fact that making that list is still subject to a lot of variables that you can't control. So making the New York Times list, again, it's one of those things that, on the New York Times list, it's one of those things that it'd be great to make it. It'll certainly add extra credibility. And of course, there's people that make it based on the merit of having a book that goes viral or a book that everybody loves, or a pass along book or word of mouth book. But to actually aiming to make the list is really tough. So somebody asked me earlier, who was the guy I said that did the New York Times launch? It was Jeff Walker. Now, Jeff Walker, if you don't know, he's like the king of marketing. And Jeff Walker, his own list probably has 800,000 to 1 million people. He has many people in his network that would have 1 million plus on their list. And he went out to those JV partners, asked them if they would promote the book. They all did that. He sold like 30-some thousand copies of his book in a week. And he found out somebody on the list at that time got on the list with roughly 10,000. He sold 30-some thousand copies and didn't make the list. He found out the reason was because he's an online marketer, they didn't really want him on the list. So, but he thought, you know what? We're going to go harder in and we're going to go all in. And a lot of the people that love Jeff and have worked with him over the years and he's built a relationship with, they did another email for Jeff, send it all out to their list again. And here's the funny part. The next week he hit about 18,000. So roughly half of what he hit the first week, and he hit number 1 on the New York Times list. So 1 week he hits over 30,000, doesn't make the list. The next time he hits, like I say, 18,000 and gets number 1. So he did make the list. And I asked him what he would do differently to make the list in the future if he could do it all over again. He said, I wouldn't worry about making the list. He said, I put in, so much effort and into that week of sales, and it maybe even hurt sustained sales in the future and all this other stuff. So can you make the list? Yes, but you need to know the rules. And typically one aspect is it needs to be a type of book that they want on the list. And I don't mean they're trying to pick and choose that way, but I just mean a type of book they see being the type of book they have on their list. And at the same time, you also have to hit a certain number of sales. It has to be from separate stores. It has to be the $20 print book. It can't be a digital book at 99 cents. It also has to be at separate stores, more than one store. There's a whole lot goes into it. So it's not an easy task. But again, you can make it. I just think that you may want to focus on the front end on having a book that people go gaga over and pass around and promote and turning it into a pass along viral book. And that'll probably get you there just as easily. So that's the New York Times list. And that's answering who was the New York Times bestselling author. Laura answered who was the my publisher, Morgan James. Somebody asked me about editing and formatting. I kind of covered it earlier. I think somebody asked, do I know of good editors and formatters? And yes, I do. And if you're at that stage, I'm sure that especially my formatter would love to work with you. I'm happy to connect you. So certainly reach out. They're the ones that format all our Blue Tux books, and I'm truly impressed with them, and their pricing is amazing. So with stuff like that, like I said, you either have to go on to those sites like 99 Designs or Upwork and work with people and see who you like and who you resonate with and who does a great job, or go to somebody else who's already done that and figure out who they're using and get that connection. Somebody asked the endorsements for republish, or if you're republishing your book, so you have your book out, is it okay, or can you get endorsements for it on the second or third or fourth go round? And the answer is yes. I did that with the Book of Why. In fact, the version that you're seeing on the screen here, that picture was from the first go round when it was self-published. And the version that we have out right now, I don't have it here, I don't think, but it's a totally different version that has James Redfield wrote the foreword. So James is on the cover. And inside we had endorsements by like John Gray from Men Are From Mars, and Biff Naked, the Canadian music icon, T. Harv Eker, Dr. John D. Martini, J.J. Virgin. So various people, and that was all added after the book was republished. So absolutely, you can get endorsements for republishing. And so ultimately you can get endorsements for republishing your book. You can put out the book as many times as you want. You would relaunch it almost the same way you launched it initially. If you want more details on that, let me know. I don't have time to go into how to get the endorsements. There's some creative ways. Obviously, the easiest way, almost I'm going to say at the end of the day, the foolproof way, but it takes a lot of work, is ask. Ultimately, if you ask, that's another way to get endorsements. But you have to be creative about how you ask. Typically speaking, it's a lot easier if you know somebody who knows the person. But anyway, I have a lot of strategy around that. But again, it's a thing I wouldn't have time to cover today. But yes, the question was, can you get endorsements on your book that was already published if you republish it? And of course, absolutely. Now, I will say, if you're with a traditional publisher, you may have to ask them and see what their parameters are. But if you self-published, you can pretty much start over and relaunch the book however you want to. For new writers, would it be strategic to write a chapter in a compilation book and build credibility? Also, what's the approximate cost a writer would spend to be in a compilation book? Would it depend on being fiction or nonfiction? Great questions. I'm not sure who that is because it says Facebook user. My answer is I'll answer it based on my experience. My first book that I was ever in was a compilation book. I went into a compilation book, paid at that time, this is quite a few years ago, 20 years ago. I paid $350 to be in a compilation book that Dr. Alan Simberg, who's on the call with us here today on the training, was in the book with me as well. That's how I met Alan. I paid $350 to be in that book, again, quite a while ago. It was the best move I ever made because I learned about the writing business on somebody else's time, meaning I got to watch what they were doing to launch the book. I got to learn the writing business that way. I got to finally get something in print so I could say, oh, I've accomplished this, and know I had something in print. That was beneficial as well, because ultimately having something in print gave me the confidence to to finally work on my own book. I was also able to write a teaser or a chapter in the book, the compilation book, that I was able to leverage to get people to my network and newsletter. And I had other people promoting it. I also was able to meet the different authors in the book, and ultimately they became clients and friends like Alan. And on and on and on. So for me, going into a compilation book was the smartest move I ever made. And that I made it before I wrote my own book. So if I honestly go by my own experience, I recommend going to a compilation book first, because you learn the book business. The book business, as you've heard today, this has been over an hour and a half, and I haven't stopped to take a breath. And I've only covered the surface. So there's so much to learn about the book business. Why spend your own money launching a book, learning on your own with a full book, very costly, making costly mistakes, maybe not impacting the lives you could, when you can learn this stuff from somebody else in their compilation book? What's the approximate cost a writer would spend to be in a compilation book? This varies. Our Blue Tux brand, like for somebody that's in our Blue Tux compilation book, they have a chapter in the book. It's a bit different because, as some of you know, we do a whole lot more than the book chapter. You end up being on our podcast. We get you on our virtual stage. We do a lot of other stuff. We do the flyers. There's a whole bunch more we do, so it's hard for me to compare to others. Our compilation book right now, I think our price goes up next month. but the current price right now, I think it's $14.50 to be in our compilation book. But that comes with a whole lot of other bonuses that don't often come with compilation books. So that's what our price is. I know of somebody right now that's charging $17,000 US to be in a chapter in the compilation book. So the price can go as high as you want. The lowest I've traditionally seen is for it to be in a really good book that's going to go somewhere has been around $700 to $1,000. Again, we're at $14.50, but we have a whole bunch of other bonuses with that. But yeah, it can go all over the place. I mean, it can go as high as you want it to go, really, depending on who you write it with, who's co-authoring, all that stuff. The cool thing now is we're even bringing celebrity co-authors in. So we have Dr. Joe Vitale and Marie Diamond each co-authoring the foreword for our upcoming books. And so we're even adding that aspect in, and the pricing's pretty much stayed the same. So I'm just giving you that. The best way I could give you an answer is to tell you what our price is, because that gives you a range. Most of the compilation books you see are nonfiction. There are some fiction. Would it depend? Yeah, but it would also more so depend on the person putting the book out and all the things they're putting it with and what they have to charge to make it work for them. So hopefully that answered the question. Where are we at here? Yeah, and so somebody put typical between 1,000 and 3,000, and yeah, I would say that's fair. I'm right at the top of the hour, and I have a Zoom client call here any second. So I'll tackle the last two questions. I'll try to do it in less than a minute. Somebody asked about titles. How important are they? I would say they're hugely important. Don't sweat the small stuff. Men Are From Mars. I would say there's a pretty good argument that the reason those books went on to sell millions of copies, if not the cover, it was the title. I mean, I think it's the cover and the title are the two things. In their cases, I would argue it was probably the title. Think and Grow Rich. Originally, the title was going to be, oh my gosh, I can't make a boodle with your noodle. There you go. You guys got a big takeaway today. You probably never heard Behind the Curtain. The original title for Think and Grow Rich was How to Make a Boodle with Your Noodle. It's that, and boodle meant money back then, and noodle is your head. So how to make money with your head really means almost the same thing. But how many people agree it probably wouldn't sell as many copies called How to Make a Boodle with Your Noodle than it did with Think and Grow Rich? So title is crucial. Again, I don't have time to go through how to come up with creative titles here today, but it's crucial. And sponsor for your books. That's another thing. Laura asked that question, and Laura, maybe I'll tackle that at a different time because sponsors for your books, that's another big area. But we did definitely have sponsors for our early books. The one thing I would say is whenever you're doing that, try to get away from, don't have it so that the sponsor, like your books that's sponsored by, unless you're giving away the book. And inside the book, don't have your sponsor listed there so it devalues the look of the book. Find a way to give the sponsor a ton of value without having them listed somewhere, inside the book or what have you. That's my own personal take. We had sponsors. We had up to 30 sponsors at a time in some of our books without ever having a sponsor logo in the book. And yet they still would tell you, I believe, that they got massive value in return. So that's my quick answer on that, Laura. Hopefully you guys seen all these areas that I just skimmed really quick and some I didn't even cover. This was an hour and a half and the questions kept coming and I didn't stop, and I could still probably go for another 2 hours, 3 hours. So the book business is very a complex business, but I'm hoping this helped you today get a really good concept and understanding about how to launch books, unique ways to write them, how to sell extra copies of your books, and all those kind of great things. I know, like I said, there's so much more I could have covered, and maybe I'll do a part 2 at some point. Also, for those of you that came in late, just so you know, wherever you're watching this right now, as soon as I'm done, it should stay up as a replay. So you'll be able to watch the replay going forward. And then at some point, I may grab the video and crop it a bit and send it out to my list and stuff as a replay as well. Thank you, guys. You guys are so awesome. Sorry, I covered this so quickly today. I just had so much I wanted to share with you guys in such a short amount of time. Thank you guys for being you. I appreciate you. I support you. You guys are awesome. You're all rock stars. Until next time, thank you, thank you, thank you.